Welcome, parents. So today we're going to be bringing together the practice of mindfulness of our children's emotions with mindfulness of our thoughts about our children in this mindset talk about how to set limits with our children depending on what emotional state they're in, depending on where they are in their little brains. Most of us, when our children are off track and acting out, most of us try to teach our children in those moments something important. And that's the exact moment when it will be really unlikely that our children will learn anything from us. I think about it like trying to teach children in the classroom when the fire alarm is going off. So the fire alarm is kind of like the limbic brain, the emotional brain sounding its alarms. And we're trying to do something with their prefrontal cortex, their higher order thinking brain, teaching them information when most of the blood and energy is in their fire alarm energy of the brain, the limbic brain. They're off track, they're acting out. So there's not a lot of blood and energy flow in the prefrontal cortex, in the thinking, higher order thinking brain, for them to be online there to take in the information we're trying to teach them. So when they're acting out, when they're off track, when they're in an emotional state, that's the worst time, the least effective time to try to teach them something and inform them of something and help them understand something. So when is a good time? Because it's very important that we access their prefrontal cortex, access their higher order thinking, talk to them about their feelings and the effect that their feelings have on other people around them, including us. So when is a good time? Well, I drew a little triangle here to represent the different emotional states that our children are in. And this does not correlate with the zones of regulation that many of you might know about through occupational therapy and special education classes and speech therapy, which is a wonderful chart. That chart of zones of regulation is wonderful. It's different than this. This is just something I designed to think about the emotional state our children are in terms of our discipline, our teaching capacity with them, and how we might intervene to help them become more regulated adults and also emotionally intelligent. So here at the bottom, the base is the green zone. And I really think about the green zone as the majority of what we'll do with our kids. This is, hopefully most of the time, if not now, eventually, most of the time. It's the base. So in the green zone is when the children are relaxed and joyful and at ease or calm. So this is a great time to connect with our kids and talk to them. If we're on our way to a store and our kids usually run off in the parking lot on the way to the store when they're relaxed and calm in the car, is a great time to talk to them about the rules and ask them what rules we have in parking lots. So to be proactive, to teach and inform and talk about rules and effects that they have on us when they're calm and relaxed. And reading books about emotions and how to handle emotions is also great during the green zone phases. So the the orange zone is when the child is starting to get agitated emotionally. So they haven't flipped their lids fully yet. They're a little agitated. They're whining. You can see that they're a little bit upset about something. So I call this the orange zone. And in the orange zone is a really beautiful time to explore collaborative problem solving. And collaborative problem solving is a great conflict management tool. It's a skill that can be developed. And I started using collaborative problem solving with my son when he was about 2 years old. Now he's 7, and he continues to use collaborative problem solving with me regularly, and he'll engage it. So collaborative problem solving is just a really beautiful, simple formula that helps to bring in both of our needs. So often we as parents either focus solely on the child's need or solely on our need. When they're in the orange zone, it's a good time to see if they might be willing to collaborate. If they are willing to collaborate, it will probably drop them down into the green zone where it will be very workable. If they're not able and willing to collaborate, it will probably bring them up into the red zone where they'll flip their lids, and then we have a different intervention in the red zone. So in the orange zone with collaborative problem solving, we say, so let's talk. So I usually like to start this ritual of collaborative problem solving by saying, well, let's talk, sweetie. And then we come sit next to each other, we look at each other, sometimes we hold hands. Especially when my son was very young as a toddler, I would ask him to hold my hand so we can really engage this process. And if he couldn't sit there and hold my hands, and that meant he was in the upper orange zone leading into the red zone. So it's a little litmus test. So can we engage in this process together? So let's talk, hold hands. So you want X, I want Y. What can we do so we're both a little happy? Then it's helpful to let the child come up with some ideas. And this was developed by Ross Greene, a really lovely therapist and researcher, and worked in the Boston area for many years. So you want X, I want Y, what can we do so we're both a little happy? So sometimes when I would engage in something like this, I wouldn't know the answer, and I wouldn't think that there would be anything I would be willing to do. And I would be surprised by some of the ideas my son would come up with, and I would think, oh yeah, I would be willing to do that. So it sometimes feels like you're stepping off into the great unknown, and you might be totally skeptical that anything could possibly come up that you would be okay with. And that's to be expected. You're stepping off into a little bit of a cliff with this process. But it's also important to know that you, as the parent, have the ultimate veto power. So your son or daughter might come up with lots of ideas, and you might veto them. So you might say, nope, that doesn't work for me. Let's keep thinking. Or, ooh, good idea. Let's come up with other ideas too. So actually, in the brainstorming process, it's important to welcome as many ideas as possible without saying no right away. So, ooh, that's a good idea. Let's think of other ideas too. Let's keep going. I think we can think of some more ideas. And then at the end, you can say, well, that one doesn't work for me, this one doesn't work for me, but this one does. So you have the ultimate say as the parent in this process. And if the child can't think of anything, or starts getting agitated, or comes up with an idea, you implement it, and the child still isn't happy with it, then you know they're in the upper orange zone into the red zone. And another tool that you can use in the orange zone, so one is collaborative problem solving. Another one is playful limits. And this tends to be more down near the green to orange zone, where they'll be more effective. So playful limits. So I love to use playful limits in the morning and at night with my son. It's so much more effective than getting tight and tense and frustrated with him when I'm trying to set limits with him. And it's really been a bonding experience for us. It's incredibly effective in helping him get going and follow his bedtime routine and his morning routine. So it would sound like this. Okay, I see it's 7 o'clock. What does that mean? So asking him questions instead of telling him is really helpful, a light tone. And, you know, if he's dragging his feet a little bit with his bedtime routine, I might say, I'm going to count to 10, and at 10, the tickle monster is going to come out. Or probably not the tickle monster, because we don't usually tickle, but I might kind of playfully talk about the tickle monster, or it might be the Zerbert monster. So I'm going to count to 10, and the Zerbert monster is going to come out. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is a very different way of counting. Most parents count, you know, I'm going to count to 3, and then I'm going to come after you with my hand, or I'm going to count to 3, and then you get a timeout. I've actually never used counting in a punitive way like that. I use counting in a very playful way, and I find it much, much more effective for the long term as well as in the short term. So there's this constrained amount of time, and studies do show that constrained time makes for more efficient time, both in kids and in adults. So I'm giving a clear time, and I'm also ending it with something playful and light, not something to be feared, but something playful and connected, physically connecting, where I come after him and I'll Zerbert him. And a lot of parents think, well, wouldn't that make him want to break the rule, you know? And sometimes in the beginning especially, it does a little bit, but it's also effective at getting things moving along and developing the connection. And when you develop connection, you're putting money in the bank. And each time you ask the child to do something for you, you're withdrawing money from the bank. So we want to make sure we have plenty of money in that bank. We're investing constantly in that bank account of connection. So long term, it leads to greater cooperation, a lot more internal motivation to cooperate. So long term, it's incredibly effective. And the short term, in the beginning, you might find kids playing with that boundary, a little bit of not quite doing it. And then it can be helpful to play for a bit, give the 5 Zerberts, and then say, okay, now it's really time. And the children will feel that shift from the play to a little bit more firm tone that's not punitive or shaming or judgmental. So in all of this, we're focusing on cultivating the capacity to offer a non-judgmental tone with our children, especially when we're setting limits, especially when we're disciplining. So this is mindful discipline. Which comes from a root word which means to teach. Okay. So we want to have a non-judgmental attitude. And it tends to be much more effective that way. Okay, and so also in the morning when our son was little, he would regularly just take his plate to the sink and clear his table. And as he got a little older, it was harder and harder to get him to do that. And I noticed myself getting frustrated and tense, and I would nag in a tense, tight tone, and it was totally ineffective. And you might be able to empathize with that. I know a lot of parents struggle with this. So I realized that I was contributing to a dynamic with my behavior, with my body, with my tone, with my thoughts that was unhelpful. I was contributing to this dynamic. So in order to help my son change, I knew I needed to change. So what did I do? Because he was in the green to orange zone, I used playful limits. This is when they're in kind of this area down here. And I said, okay, each time you leave your plate on the table, I'm going to come and give you 5 Zerberts, and Daddy's going to come and give you 5 Zerberts. And we implemented it and we enforced it. And he loved it. And he's much more able to remove his own plate and clear his own part of the table and actually help us with our table settings too, because of this playful intervention. So we're on him, we're firm, we're enforcing, but we're doing it with a light tone, with lots of love and connection and physicality, non-judgment. So it's like, oh yay, we get to give you 5 Zerberts, come here, you, and then chase him and have a hard time getting to him, depending on how much time we have. And it's really sweet. So we can make limits fun. And when they're a little bit lighthearted and fun, they're a lot more effective because the child doesn't go into warning system in their brains. So an interesting study here that Dan Siegel cites in his book, No Drama Discipline, he talks about a study where people were in the MRI and were shown images of an angry face. And their brains were studied and found that as soon as they saw this image of someone with an angry face, their amygdala, which is a part of the limbic brain, deep in the brain, the emotional brain, the amygdala would get a lot of energy and blood flow to it. So it would sound off the fire alarm in the emotional brain. interestingly, even if this was a subliminal message, so even if the image flashed on the screen so quickly that the subject, the person in the MRI, didn't even know that they saw this image, couldn't even report that they saw an image of an angry face, it still had an impact on the amygdala. So a child's ability to pick up on slight, almost inarticulate cues in the face can still send warning system alarms off in our brain. And one of the things that helps calm the amygdala down when it flares up like that, when it sees an angry face in the MRI, is when the subjects were asked to name their emotional state, to name anxiety, to name fear, to name concern or agitation. As soon as they were able to name their emotional state and put a word to it, the flare-up in the amygdala calmed down. It was able to be soothed. And that's bringing the prefrontal cortex online. So I find it helpful not to force a child to state their emotional state, or to articulate their emotional state, but instead to name it ourselves. And sometimes parents will end up getting frustrated with their child when they try to start entering into collaborative problem solving or playful limits. They'll start that way, they'll start relaxed, and then something will trigger them, and then they'll get frustrated, and then they'll flip their lid as the parent. So what's helpful is for us to calm ourselves down is to name our own emotional state. And I regularly, especially when my son was a toddler, I would regularly say, I'm noticing I'm feeling frustrated. Please note that I didn't say, I'm noticing I'm feeling really frustrated with you. So that's a different tone. And it also ends with you. And that's pointing my finger at my son. And I don't think I've ever said that my entire life. I've been really clean and clear with owning my own emotional experience. If I'm frustrated, it's because I'm frustrated. I'm feeling that wave of frustration. It has to do with me. Someone else in that situation might not feel frustrated. So I'm noticing I'm feeling frustrated. And it gives a little cue to the child. Oh, this is what frustration looks like. We can talk about it. It's okay to have frustration. It's okay to name frustration. It's healthy and wise to name frustration. And then if I do end up flipping my lid, which happened from time to time, I'm human, even if I named my frustration, which would help, I still might continue to be so triggered that I'd flip my lid or need to leave the room and ask for a self-timeout. Then my son has a little preemptive warning. So he knows that if I get to the point where I say I'm feeling frustrated, it's possible that I might get so frustrated I'll raise my voice by mistake, because I don't believe that raising our voices is effective consciously, but it could happen from time to time by mistake. Or it might mean that I will excuse myself from the room soon because I need a self-timeout because I'm getting so triggered. I need to self-regulate. So it's helpful if we, in the process of disciplining our kids, start to get frustrated. It's helpful to model our own capacity to name our emotional states. And you can also make little guesses about our children's emotional states. Certainly, Dan Siegel encourages this, and I invite you to explore this a little bit and see what works for your child. I have worked with some adults who had parents, when they were kids, had parents who named their feelings for them all the time, and they found it very intrusive. So do this sparingly. Name your child's emotions sparingly. Do it with a little bit of a, I feel like seems like you might be a little frustrated, Or, it seems like you might be feeling a little frustrated. What do you think? So always give them the ability to say yes or no. And a lot of kids are so uncomfortable with their own feelings that they'll deny that they have any feelings that aren't comfortable at all. So just, sparingly experiment with this. So then what happens when the child is either already in the red zone or begins to shift into the red zone? When a child is in the red zone, we can think about Susan Steifelman's work. And she says, instead of coming at your child, come alongside your child. And I think this is true for all of these emotional zones. Thinking about becoming an ally for our child, coming alongside them instead of at them. With playful limits, with collaborative problem solving, we're coming alongside them instead of at them. When they're in the red zone, instead of coming at them and saying, you shouldn't be doing that, you're grown up, you shouldn't be acting like you're 2 years old, or go to your room right now, that's at them. We can come alongside them and come down to their level and let them know we're not a threat. We're not going to add more tension to this moment of their own overwhelm and their own emotional tension coming out. So we make a connection, we stay calm, we come close, we offer connection. So Susan Steifelman's work of coming alongside them instead of at them, and Patty Whiffler's work of stay listening. So from Hand in Hand Parenting is what I recommend in the red zone. Stay calm, come close, offer connection, and stay and listen. And let's say that what we're collaborating about is a cookie. So the child wants to have a cookie before dinner while they're waiting for dinner. And I say, no, we're not going to have cookie before dinner. So I set my limit. And the child says, but I want a cookie, Mommy, I really want a cookie. And we go back and forth a little bit. I say, nope, no cookie. So it's helpful if limits are simple and short and very few words. And then maybe my child will say, well, can we talk about it? And I'll say, sure, we can talk about anything, because they're in the orange zone. If they were in the red zone saying, I want a cookie right now, that's not fair, I need a cookie, then I wouldn't enter into collaborative problem solving. I would focus on stay listening. I would put everything aside as best I could, if I could in that moment. I would come close, stay calm, and offer connection. And if I was in the middle of cooking, I might not be able to stay listen. So I might say something like, I'm not able to listen to you right now. I will listen as soon as I'm done with this part of dinner, but right now I can't listen. And then they would just have their feelings without me being fully present with them. It's helpful if we can put everything down and set everything aside and come close and listen. So taking advantage of that anytime we are feeling well-resourced and aren't in a rush with other things going on at home, like cooking or preparing for school. But we can't always predict when this will happen. So depending on whether or not the child is in the orange zone, I might start entering into collaborative problem solving. So let's say I say, so you want to have a cookie before dinner, and I don't want you to have a cookie before dinner. I want you to have an empty stomach before dinner. So what can we do so we're both a little happy? And then maybe we come up with an idea that she can have one bite before dinner and save the rest for after dinner. That would be okay with me. So let's say we do that, she takes a bite, and then she says, but I want it all! And now she's getting so agitated in her body. She's in the upper orange zone, lower red zone. So I know, okay, this is stay listening time. We're entering into stay listening time. So what I can do when she's in the upper orange zone is set a limit. A clear limit with very few words, knowing that as I set this limit, as I give something firm for her to bump up against, she's showing me this agitation. As I show her something firm to bump up against, she's going to explode. So the limit combined with stay listening is like a love bomb. I'm going to come close, stay calm with all my love, set a limit, and it's going to cause her to explode. She's going to explode. And to expect that is helpful so it doesn't come as a shock or a surprise. When we come in with our love bombs, it's going to cause an explosion. So I set a limit knowing that that will help her offload her tension. It will help her move into the red zone. It's helpful if the limit is simple. A lot of parents will go into lawyer mode and will explain with paragraphs why they're doing this, and will engage in content with the child, and that is all ways that the child and the parent are avoiding the expression of feelings, the offloading of tension. So keep the limit very short. 1 to 3 words is what I recommend. Nope. The answer is no. I said no. Not right now. And it's best if it's once every minute or so. So a light tone, a warm face, remembering that if we cast an angry face at our child, it will add more tension to their emotional brain and cause more anxiety and fear and acting out. So warm tone, warm face, relaxed, calming our body. As they enter into the orange to red zone, it will cause us to rev up in our own bodies. So we can be mindful about the sensations that are unfolding in our own bodies as they're revving up. Know that we'll probably rev up too. And we can notice that with our mindfulness practice. We can notice, I'm revving up. And I can have choice over this. And with awareness comes choice. So I can choose to calm my body. I can choose to down-regulate. I can choose to connect with the earth. So there's this revving up process that literally causes us to feel like we're boiling. And we can invite the energy down. We can soften the body actively, relax the jaw, relax the tummy. So set a limit, enter into the collaborative problem solving zone. They don't follow through with it. They're having a hard time. They get more agitated. We set a limit that will usually cast them into the red zone, and then we stay listen. Come close, stay calm, and listen. And that's in the stay listening red zone area. That's when it's helpful to know that hurtful words will be coming out of the child in some form, at themselves, at us. Some kids act out, some kids act in. So what's helpful is to stay relaxed around whatever words come out. And we can just know, again, that this is the hurt coming out of the child. This is their hurt coming out. This is their emotional tension. Something about this that's been hurting them inside. It's coming out at me or at themselves. And I got this. I'm containing it with my love, with my presence, with my own regulated self. It will be well contained. So as long as it's contained, it will be a healing process and something that they can download for the future that they can use themselves and internalize. If they're off on their own in their own bedroom, thinking, I hate her, or I hate myself, I just want to die, that's unregulated, that's uncontained, and that's unhelpful. So as much as possible, we want our children to come to us in our regulated states and tell us all of the hurt that they have inside about us or about themselves. So as we stay, what will often happen is that the child will be coming into fuller contact with their own emotions. That's been leading to their off-track behavior. Off-track behavior. And they will want to avoid this emotion. So in order to avoid this emotion, they need us to go away, because the closer we come to them as they're feeling this emotion that's been leading to their off-track behavior, the more in touch with that emotion they become. Because we're well regulated, we're safe, it's then becomes safe for them to feel their feelings more fully, and this is an uncomfortable process. This is the natural aversion we have to unpleasantness in life. And therefore, the child needs our regulated, stable, steady presence in order to come more into contact with the pain that they've been running from, the discomfort they've been running from, to experience it more fully, to offload it more fully so it can transform them. Once they offload the off-track behavior, they come all the way down into the green zone again. But they need our help, our presence, to fully offload their off-track behavior that's led from the feelings. So to fully offload the emotional tension that leads to the off-track behavior. And then they're much more relaxed in their bodies. They're much more able to cooperate. So they're relaxed. They can learn, they can take in new information, much more cooperation. So if we can stay listen, set the limit, stay listen, come back to the limit and stay listen. So Patty Whiffler says limit, listen, limit, listen. So if we can engage that whole process for the whole big wave of their feeling that comes through, then we'll have a very clean, clear, relaxed child to interact with, probably for another day or two. And eventually, as you continue to work this process for several months, we go through several months without having our son have a need for offloading emotional tension. It's really sweet and beautiful and lovely. So I highly encourage you to explore this process. So in the red zone, when we stay listen and set limits and stay listen, the child might be saying things like, I hate you, or I just want to die, you don't love me. And it's very important to be non-reactive to those statements and instead be encouraging. We want them to have a safe place that they can go to say these things. So it's helpful to say things like, I understand. I'm going to keep you safe. I know that you feel like you want to end your life, and I'm going to be here for you to make sure you don't. So parents have come to me several times with their 7-year-old saying, I just want to die, or I just wish I could end everything. And the parent, of course, thinks this means that their child is suicidal. And what happens is the parent becomes very agitated and adds a tremendous amount of agitation into the mix and says things like, don't say that. And, with agitation and tone and judgment and concern and anxiety, trying to get the child not to say this, which is unhelpful because the child is obviously feeling it. It's like a splinter inside that's getting infected. And what's helpful is to get the splinter out so it doesn't continue to cause an infection inside. Instead, what we tend to do, conventional wisdom tells us as parents to say, don't say that. You're going to scare people if you say that, or that's the worst thing you could say ever. Don't ever say that again. And that causes that infected splinter to stay inside, continuing to cause infection and dis-ease in the child. So we want to get it out. We want to help remove the splinter, and when we do, we touch that tender place in the child, and it hurts and it's uncomfortable. So as we come close and stay calm and say, I know you're feeling bad. I'm going to help stay with you until you feel better. Or, I hear how bad you feel. I know it's hard. I want to be with you. I'll be here. You're safe. I'll keep you safe. So we set a limit about staying and about understanding and validating their pain, even though we know whatever pain they're in isn't enough for them to end their life. They're not talking about ending their life. They're just talking about wanting to escape and not feeling good about themselves. And it's important that we create a safe place for them to tell us about that. So on the other hand, on the other extreme, on the other side of the spectrum, when we come close, stay calm, offer emotional safety, the child gets more in touch with their emotions, it's uncomfortable for them. On the other end of the spectrum, they'll push us away. They'll say, go away, or I hate you, or you don't love me, things like that directed at us. So whatever the initial issue was, the cookie, as I say, nope, no cookie, and the child might say, but you promised, you said that we could have a bite, and we'll say, yeah, but now I'm saying no. And just stay very simple with my words, maybe 3 words every minute or so, not engaging in the content trap, setting a clear, firm limit, and then knowing that that will help the child expel, offload the emotional tension. So stay calm, come close, offer connection, set my limit very simply and clearly so that the child can offload their tension. And know that the child will either say hurtful words about themselves or hurtful words about me, and that's okay. I am fully prepared for that. And in the red zone, I might say something like, keep going, sweetie. That's it, get it all out. It's kind of like they're vomiting. We want all of that icky stuff that's causing disease in their body to get out. So instead of stopping it or setting a limit on it when they're in the red zone, I'm actually encouraging that. And if they're kicking or hitting, I might contain it with my hand, very calmly contain and say, and take responsibility for it and say, I'm not going to let you do that. And if they are too big that I can't contain their physicality, I would take a pillow and put a big pillow between us and say, here you go, honey, you can kick this. I'm not going to let you hurt me, but you can kick this. Or let's go run outside together. I'm not going to let you kick me, but we can kick the air. We can run outside really fast. So helping to facilitate their offloading through words, through physicality, encouraging this. But however, if they say hurtful things in the green zone when they seem relaxed, or in the orange zone, then I'm going to offer playful limits, or I'm going to take them aside and give them a time in and say, sweetie, Those aren't words that we say in our family. We really value kind words in our family. So we would bring in a family value. I'd take them aside. I'd make eye contact with them. I'd establish a connection first, connect before I correct. I might say, did I just hear the word stupid? I think that means I need to give 5 Zerberts to those cute little lips over there. So set a playful limit around it if they're in the green zone. The child will still feel contained even though it's playful. If you feel like that's going to encourage them to say stupid much more, no problem. You don't have to do it that way. You can just say calmly, non-judgmentally, come over to the child and say, hey, sweetie, come on over here and sit with me for a little bit. In our family, we don't say words like that to each other. What are some different words you can say? Or if it was to a sibling, hey, sweetie, I'm not going to let you call so-and-so stupid. In our family, we're kind to each other. Well, what do you need to tell me about your sister or your brother? Let's go into another room so you can tell me all about it. And then offer some offloading, there. So I maybe set a little limit and see if you can just let them stay into the orange to green zone, just telling you about stuff. It might not be a full red zone offloading session, but just a gentle limit, and just let them tell you about the frustration they're having with their sibling. So I would always catch and set limits on and address just any old stupid that gets out there in the green to orange zone. But in the red zone, I'm actually encouraging it, because now this is offloading time. So that's what I would recommend. All of this is with a non-judgmental attitude, because when we start bringing our judgments to our children, they start feeling badly about themselves. And they start sensing our angry faces, which causes alarms in their emotional brain, which makes it less likely that they're going to be able to listen and cooperate well, because they have all of this emotional tension that comes from our angry face and our judgmental tone and our judgmental thoughts about them. So we as the parent have the power to become more aware of the thoughts we think about our kids, to intervene with more neutrality, with less judgment, in a more mindful way. And when we make these choices because of this awareness that we have developed, we'll see that our children are much more able to follow our guidelines and cooperate a lot more easily and be more relaxed and flexible in their play. So please feel free to share your questions, especially if you're in the Facebook group. And I look forward to a continued discussion about all of this in mindful discipline. Blessings.